Here's what we're going to do tonight. Tell me if this is okay with you guys. I'm not going to sit up here and emotionally vomit on you for 45 minutes, I promise. We're going to break that up a little bit. I'm going to tell my story. Then I have the pleasure of working with a lot of ambitious men in my career, and I'm going to tell you about what I've learned from myself and working with them. Then I hopefully give you 3 takeaways that you can take back and apply to your life, and then we'll do a close. Is that cool with you guys? Sweet. So, do you mind if I tell you a little bit of my story? It's only the second or third time it's been told out loud, so let's do this together. So my story starts in Morrow, Georgia, in Clayton County. Any Clayton County boys in here? That's what I thought. Once you get, not many of us get out of there, so as you'll, literally. So does anyone know where that is? Okay, that's where your airport sits, y'all. So just kind of letting you know. So I grew up in a neighborhood right outside the airport. So it was a good blue-collar part of the world. Most people were not college educated, never wanted to be college educated. They either went to a trade school or the military. Most of them worked in the Ford plant, which is now that sexy Porsche Center down there. I don't know if anybody's, that's really cool. Or they worked at Delta or Coca-Cola. My parents were no different. But they wanted something a little bit more from me. They wanted me to get out of that neighborhood. But my mom was known by the boys in the neighborhood as the warden because she had really strict rules, she had really strict curfew, and she was really cared about grades. And let me tell you how tough this woman is. So I was told recently that she had stage 4 breast cancer in August. And she's not going to make it till Thanksgiving. And gentlemen, that was 3 Thanksgivings ago. So this is a tough woman. Since we're in a, well, we'll see if you clap in a minute. We'll get through it together. But since we're in a faith-based church, I thought you'd appreciate this joke. There's the old joke, you know, heaven doesn't want her, and hell scared she'll take over. That's Warden BREEDLOVE. So I was 6'2", till I was 19 years old. I was 6'2", a very nerdy kid, very skinny. I weighed 165 pounds, all the way up till I was 19 years old. Pretty close to where I'm at right now, right there at it. The problem with being 6'2" and skinny, and the youngest by a few years in an all-boy neighborhood in the south side of Atlanta, you begin really quickly and really frequently getting beat on, and picked on, and picked on. And the problem wasn't just on the street. The problem was also, and most of the time, in the house. And so my mom and dad, when they weren't warring with each other, and the way they warred with each other is they used weapons, they used pepper grass, they used anything they could pick up. And their favorite thing to do was to beat on each other, and it was a nightly experience. And so when they were done with each other, they would turn to us. And my sister, who's 10 years older than me, bore the brunt of those beatings for most of our life. But rightly so, when she turned 18 years old, she split. And so that left me alone, and one of my first memories as a young man was sweeping the back porch with a metal broom, and apparently I didn't do it right, and my mom decided to hit me over the head with the metal broom, causing pretty severe things. But it didn't just end there. The problem was there was no safe place for me, either in the house or the street. And something hit me recently, and I haven't shared this, I don't think, with much of anybody, but one of my earliest memories and one of my brightest parts of my childhood was my grandfather. He was one of the bright spots in my life. And my first concert ever, he took me to Donnie and Marie Osmond. All right. I was a puppy though, boys, so I didn't buy the tickets. But I don't know if you guys remember your first concert, especially as a really young kid. You come back and you're on an emotional high. I mean, you feel really good about it. And so I grabbed my little umbrella, and I had a t-shirt all the way down there. I think it was an adult small, and it was all the way down. And I decided to walk around the neighborhood singing songs I didn't even know what I was singing. I still couldn't sing a Donnie and Marie Osmond song if you asked me to. But a couple of teenage boys saw me. And they saw the t-shirt, they saw the umbrella, and they thought it would be a really funny idea to hold it was pouring rain, to hold my head into the gutter, into the water, and beat me with the umbrella, and then rip the shirt off my body. But that's not where the story goes bad. The story goes bad is when I got back home, my grandfather was still there, and when I came wobbling into the house, my dad, embarrassed, stands up because he didn't want any pussy bitch son of his to embarrass him, decided to beat me. And my dad only knew one way to beat me, and that was with his fist after the beating that I had taken on the street. Just your average Sunday, and I was 8 years old. And I wasn't going to share this part, but Steve, where are you, Steve? I can't see. All I can see is that God light. Oh, there you are back there. That's all. Woo! Steve shared something with me over here, and so I wasn't even going to include this, but I'm going to include it anyway. So there's some things that I could say up here that can't be unsaid. So I'm going to say it like this, and you can't unhear it once I say it. But statistically, there's a lot of men in this room, and I hope that I'm wrong with what I'm about to tell you. But a lot of us were sexually abused as young men, both inside or out of the home, and sometimes both. And sometimes it was really, really bad. And let me tell you, it's taken long, many, many years, is they can steal your dignity and they can steal your sexuality. But they can only steal that temporary. But they can't steal your soul, and you are worthy and you are lovable, and you are worthy and you are lovable, and I want to leave that at that. So with that being said, what happens to the young boy who's beaten and tortured, among other things? Is you get angry. And then you get rageful. And then you become what you hate. You become that bully. And so at 18 years old, in the blink of an eye, in a fit of jealousy, in a fit of rage, in a fit of a massive amount of vodka, with these hands, I almost beat to death a person in my life that meant more to me than anyone else. I can still remember the blood and carnage. It haunts me to this day. And rightfully so, the state of Georgia decided to charge me with 2 felonies. And the penalty for those 2 felonies was going to be 7 years. Luckily, by a lot of good luck, good fortune, and some grace, those felonies were dropped to 2 harsh misdemeanors, and I was sent to 2 years. 1 suspended, and ended up spending my 19th birthday in a cage. So that's where I spent my 19th birthday. I was a really tough kid at that point, but I realized really quickly, being a skinny white kid in a South Atlanta penitentiary, this was going to be a very, very tough ride. But something miraculous happened. 2 of the first male mentors ever appeared in my life. That's what makes this so beautiful, man. You can lean in and lean on to each other. That's what this is all about. I didn't have that as a young man. One was a sheriff's deputy, and the other, remarkably, was an African-American man, really built guy, 45-year-old guy named Tony. Called me young blood. I love that. Still remember that to this day. But gentlemen, you don't realize how big of a deal that was because he probably saved my life. He had to step out because racists don't mix in jail. They just don't. It's crazy. It's the exact opposite, actually. For him to step out and step in and to help me get through it safely, to help him, to mentor me through this process, that was a big deal. And I got through it. By their help. So that was evolution 1 of my life. So I picked myself up, dusted myself off, And I'm not kidding when I tell you this. I went to work in a nuclear waste container factory on Fulton Industrial Boulevard at 18 years old during the day, and was putting myself through community college at night with debt. I was broke, boys, broke. So that work was brutal. My job, I look like Zach. Can you guys see Zach up there? That's Hulk Hogan up here. My job is I would take this 80-pound container, sit it up on a container, saw off the top, pick the 80-pound container, and put it back down. That's what I did for 8 hours a day. The average temperature was 110 degrees, and I was covered from head to toe. And when I tell you the smell was horrible, it was horrible. It was such rough work that it cost me a hernia operation and a major back surgery before I was done with it in 2 years. There's an old joke. So I made $6 an hour. Have you ever heard of being po? That's where you can't afford the O and the R. That's where I was at that point in my life. So I was making $6 an hour, and I remember, truth, I remember questioning how I was going to eat, but there's times I had to pawn my car twice to get cash, to get the car fixed, to get to work so they wouldn't fire me. True story. And I remember it smelled so bad, and I'm gonna tell you a positive male story here in a second, because this isn't all bad, I promise you. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. But I told you guys my clothes smell really bad. In fact, my roommate at the time, we were living in this really bad place, the kind of place that you drive around town. And he would make me throw my clothes off and literally walk in the house naked. That's how bad it smelled. Truth. But I remember, I would work, I'd get there about 5:30 and go till 4 and then drive to the chiropractor because the work was so rough, and then to college, so I was doing like 16, 17-hour days. But I had to go to the chiropractor often, and the guy cut me a deal to only see me for $10 an hour because I think he liked me and he felt sorry for me. But he noticed something. He noticed that every time it was my turn to come in, he'd have to come outside to get me, and he just didn't understand that because I was embarrassed of the way I looked, I was embarrassed of the way I smelled, and you'd never forget how people make you feel. I told him that story, and I said, he goes, man, you've been sitting out there in the cold and hot for months. I was like, yeah, I don't want to bother the people in there. And candidly, I was embarrassed. And he comes out and he grabs me, and I do my normal thing. I'm walking into his office, and I run through the office, go back there and get broken on, what they do to you. And he stops, and there's 3 other people in there. And he says, and I quote, truth. He says, this is Tommy, and he's going to school next door, and he works in his factory. And he's embarrassed by the way he smells because of this factory. Do any of you have a problem with him sitting in here with you the next time he comes? And of course they said no. And he said, good, because if you did, I would never let you come back here again. I do believe up to that point in my life, it's the nicest thing I've ever heard. Truth. 25 years later, I was able to mentor that man's son in a very dark time in his life. It's crazy how that comes full circle. So my old man shows up, the tough Marine, shows up at my house one day, and we were pretty much estranged. He's looking around, he's like, man, this is, when my dad says this place sucks, that place sucked. He's like, you got to get out of here in that no factory job, man. He goes, what would you think about applying to the University of Georgia? I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, you've got the grades, and he had been following me, my dad. Crazy. He said, you had the grades, and he was right. I had a 4.0 because I was working, man. I worked hard at that community college. So we decided to apply to the University of Georgia, and I learned, I'm not even going to tell that joke, but apparently, No, I was just at a conference, and this seminary guy used to have a heroin habit, and then he went to prison. They never asked him about it. And then when he was graduating, they said, "Did you really have a rap sheet?" He goes, "Yeah, but you never asked, so I didn't tell." So that's what he said. Well, UGA had a different policy. So whoever's sending their kids to UGA, be proud. They have a different policy. They just don't let violent offenders in. One, my teachers and a lot of other men stepped up and gave me references, and I had to write a letter, and they eventually let me in. And UGA was this magical place for me, man. If you saw kind of where I came from and where I had been and where I was living in, I came to this place and people were smiling and laughing, and there was hot women everywhere. And who knew that, 17, 18, and 19-year-olds drove Mercedes? I didn't know that. The average cost of the cars where I'm from, about $800 with the tires. But to tell you I crushed it there, I crushed it. Because I wasn't going to go back to that cage. I wasn't going to go back to that factory, and I wasn't going to go back to those people in that neighborhood. So, I didn't end up in the factory. I'm gonna throw this in there, but I did end up at the Ritz-Carlton. So I'll tell you why. This big financial firm in town called Deloitte. Does anybody know what Deloitte is? Okay, some people do, some people don't. The only people that give a shit about big accounting firms are big accounting firms. Let's be clear. But where I came from, it was a pretty big deal, right? So I remember driving down. I had to borrow a coat and a tie and a shirt. I mean, I had no money, and I'm in a 1991 Topaz with no air conditioning, no hubcaps, and they're literally putting me up in the Ritz to interview me the next day. And I think this dude with the top hat and the blue coat, and he sees me pull in, he's like, this dude is clearly lost. So I pull in, and I think he sees the nerves. And I quote, he says, "Are you here for an interview, sir?" And I was like, "I am." So another guy that made me feel good. I think he saw the little coat and tie in there too. So Deloitte actually gave me an offer. And you got to remember, I was worried about where I was going to eat, $6 a day just a little bit before. And they gave me an offer for $35,000. That's more money than my dad had made ever to that point. And he worked his butt off. I heard 35 million. So I called my best friend at the time. Her name was Heather. Can you guys hear me okay? Because my voice, can you guys hear me all right? Her name was Heather. And now her name is Heather BREEDLOVE, all these years later. Yep. So I kept asking around. I'd never been to any place nice. I'm like, what's a really good place to go celebrate? Because they're paying me $35 million a year. Bone Steakhouse. Yeah. Later in life, I got engaged there. But imagine me pulling in with my 1991 Topaz and my hope-to-be girl. They let us in, believe it or not. They let us in. But I'd never really ordered wine before either. And they bring me this War and Peace novel. They don't have the iPads at that time. They bring me this War and Peace novel. And I'm flipping through, and I'm just trying to find the one. And I found it, $40. One, and 10,000 of them. There's a $40 wine. And he goes, "What, sir, Mr. BREEDLOVE," called me Mr. BREEDLOVE. "What number would you like?" I said, "Number 205. And he takes it away. And we're sitting there talking. We're looking around at the service and all the food and the people. We're like, I mean, you've seen those folks. That was me. The manager comes back. And he goes, "Sir, you've picked out a fantastic wine. Are you sure it was number 205? I didn't even look at the man. I was like, "Yeah, 205. I was like, "God, it's the cheapest one on there. How does he not know that?" He leaves. And a dude shows up with medals that General Patton would be proud of. swishing the rind, he's swishing it. And he says, sir, you've picked a fabulous wine. Do you mind if I try it? I was like, brother, I don't know where you're from. We don't drink each other's drinks where I'm from. Of course, I said yes. For those of you who want to know, my buddy reminded of me recently. That wine was $1,170. It was more than the car that I brought to the restaurant. And there's nothing better than financing your booze. So, just going to throw that out there. So that started my professional career, my professional white-collar career. And for those of you, I'm going to try to make this really sexy because public accounting is anything but sexy. But my job literally was hired by venture capitals, private equity, big banks, and investor groups to go into companies and beat them to death. So that was my job. It is soul-wrenching, I promise. But I worked on the financial audit, mergers and acquisitions, and financial consulting side. So that's what I did to put it in context to where we're going next. So, fast forward to when I'm 36 years old. I've moved on to another firm, 2 other firms actually. And I'm standing in my office and I've got the title, the money, the power, the prestige, the cufflinks, the car, the boats, the pretty wife, you name it. But why am I so miserable? I've gotten out of that neighborhood. And this is what's supposed to make me happy, right? This is what's supposed to give me self-esteem. And the truth is, it was all smoke and mirrors because I was the guy still who wore, and maybe some of you will relate to this, maybe some of you won't. I was never me. I was the tough guy. I was the important guy. I was the guy who couldn't ask for help. I was the I'm going to work you guy. But I was also that if you get in my way, I will destroy you guy. I reverted back to the bully. And the worst one of all, I'd become the arrogant guy, which is just a massive form of insecurity. Same kid. And my descent into darkness started simply. It started with, I've got to work late nights. And I really was that guy for a long time who got my esteem by the work and the money and the game. But then I finally realized this is not going to fill that void inside of me. But it started simply, ye who turns the lights off last wins. That was my motto. And then, Heather, I can't come home for dinner. And then, just to try to fill the void, it starts with strip clubs, then it starts with clubs, then it starts with all-nighters, and it was just a circle of darkness, and circle of darkness, and circle of, then it became chemicals, and more daring stuff. And the simple truth is I never dealt with any of those wounds and demons from my childhood. And I was still that little boy way deep down inside begging for help. I'd let myself down, my family down. You know you've let your wife down, boys, when she says, you're sucking my light out. It is not what you want to hear from your wife. And that all culminated into a 3-day chaotic, chemical-induced party, madness scene where my full intent was to have a chemical, a human, something, some situation, or somebody take my life because I was too much of a coward to do it myself. Because deep down inside, I still believed that I was that piece of garbage that was beat into me as a little puppy. I never dealt with that. After 3 days of complete chaos, I woke up half naked. Really probably more naked than that. All I saw was blue sky. I was like, am I in heaven? I was like, shit, that can't be right. I knew I didn't belong there, so I was like, I guess I'm alive. And honestly, guys, I don't know if it was God or that little boy. I don't know which one. But every fiber in my body said, you got to get up and you got to live. You got to get up and you got to live. So evolution 2, I pick myself up, find all my, that's a whole rabbit hole, I'll tell you offline. But I go home and I tell Heather everything. That didn't go well, guys. But I did say this. I said, I need to go find out who I am. So, funny side story. We had gone to, I don't know how many, but let's just say 10-ish marriage counselors over 13 years. And they all had one thing in common. After about the second or third visit, they'd all tell me to come back in and, Heather, why don't you stay at home? The first 2 times, I really did believe they're going to say, that bitch is clearly the problem. They didn't. True stories. I have no reason to lie to you now. Hell, I've all bared it all. They did do me a favor, though. The last guy said, look, man, there's this place in Tennessee, and 7 days can do more for you than I can do in 10 years, and he was right. So I went to this place in Tennessee, and they cut me open for 4 days, and it was the first time that I could feel. It was the first time I saw who I was, and it was the first time I started to believe I was lovable and worthy. And then they put me back together for 3 days, and they made me very aware of my feelings. They made me very aware of my demons and my insecurities and why I acted the way I did, and gave me a bunch of tools to move forward in my life. And for the next 3 years, and I was a principal in a big firm in town. Principal is code for junior partner, not good enough to get to the top, but pretty close. They just don't let you take off, but I didn't give them a choice. And I fully expected Heather to leave, and I told her before I left, I said, you can have every single thing we have, you've earned it. I've just got to go deal with this. I came back and she was still there. She's still here today, gentlemen. Yes, she loved me when I couldn't. Thank you for that. Seriously, thank you for that. She really did believe in loving me even when I couldn't believe in loving myself. Maybe somebody will resonate with that. That's hard for me to say now. But I made my emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being my #1 priority for 3 years. I made it my full-time job. I went from working 90 hours at the firm down to 30. And you would think that would be a problem, but it was anything but. In that 3-year time, I got rid of all the negative friends in my life. The friendships that I made were some of the best. My network leveled up 10x. My marriage became the most solid it's ever been and still is today. And professionally, by just being the man I was born to be, I went from principal to international practice leader to senior partner to being elected to the board of directors at 39 years old of a giant firm. The rest of them were 60, so I clearly belonged. But just by being a good man, a good human, and believing in myself. First time ever. Here's the kicker. I'm 5 minutes into the first board. I'm standing on the summit of Everest, man. I've made it to the top, brother. Within 5 minutes of the first board meeting, I knew I had to quit. I had to leave. 2 reasons for that. I'd become so aware of my core values and my purpose and how I wanted to live and act in my life. It wasn't that they were bad people, they were just very different people than I. That was reason #1. And reason #2 is all these alpha dudes. And I'm talking about dudes. Some of you are sitting here. That's a dude right there. If you want to know what a dude looks like, that's one right there. You know, the guys, we don't ask for help. We got this. All's good. As we're, all's good. They really did. They started reaching out to me and say, hey man, you seem to have peace and fulfillment. You seem to care about yourself, your relationships. Help me do the same and help me do that without compromising my ambition. And I knew that was my calling in life, is to help these men be better men. And so between those 2 things, I decided to quit. Valentine's Day, truth. Got my little Jeep, driving up, pretty day, got the top down in February, no joke. I said, I'm gonna quit. Call Heather. Said, baby, I'm going to quit. That didn't go well either. And I went in, and I said, I went in, and you just don't quit when you own part of the company, all that other stuff. But one of the, who knew? But I went in and quit, and guess what they did? The first thing he did is he called me an idiot. Truth. So he's going to shame me into staying, right? I'm an idiot. You've worked your whole life for this. Have I? And the second thing he did is said, oh, you're going to be the highest paid person and partner we've ever had, and the carrot, and I'm just going to start chomping at it, right? And finally, after 4 hours of this, I said, Richard, you don't have a check, brother. You just don't have a check. And he goes, what do you mean I don't have a check? I said, my soul's not for sale, man. And so I walked out that day. I walked out. We'll switch gears a little bit. Do you guys mind if I share some things that I've noticed by working with alpha men? Can I share some wisdom with you? Sure. Gentlemen, we crave respect. We crave it. I hear it every day of my life. It drives us. And what we're really saying is, do you see me? Do you hear me? And do I matter? I see it every day of my life from men just like you. And do I matter part, guess what we think that means for us? Money and power. That's what we're seeking. We're seeking our validation from money and power. How many of you guys ask somebody tonight, what do you do? What do you do? We do it. Let me step back for a second. Okay. Anyone says that money's not important, they're broke. Run from them. However, it is only a scorecard, and it is a magnifying glass. It is a great scorecard for business, and it is a magnifying glass. If you are a wonderful person, it will magnify that wonder, and if you are a terrible person, you know what it will do. But here's the truth, gentlemen, is we all have stories and wounds. We all have things we wish we hadn't have done. We all have things that we wish people wouldn't know, right? And our biggest fear, gentlemen, myself included, by the way, I'm talking into a mirror. I'm just not talking to you. Do you hear this, Tommy? You listening? Our biggest fear, humiliation. We don't want to be humiliated. Truth. Because what happens when everyone figures out, I don't know what I'm doing? Worse, what if they figure out and see me for who I really am? And you want to know the dark one? What if they really know what I truly desire? Everybody in this room, and I got nothing but love for you. But there's hope, gentlemen, for us. There is absolute hope for us. So I have learned to, over time, through a bunch of schools, to start, I call it the Tommy go round. When we get in that, am I worthy? Am I good enough? Am I insecure? What if I call it the Tommy go round. There's a bunch of tools that can help you live the best life that you can live. Do you mind if I share a couple of those tools with you? So wisdom comes in a lot of different ways, and this wisdom happened to come from a river rafting guide, true story. You never know where it's going to come. And I was sitting there, and this is post, we'll call it spiritual transformation. It was, post rock bottom for the second time. We'll call it cool. It wasn't spiritual transformation, man. So this guy, he looks at me, and we were going to do this pretty extreme. We're going to do the Golly River, and I don't know if you guys know where that is. There's 5 class 5 rapids on that. So he says, you got to participate in your own rescue, man. I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I really did. I was like, yes. Truth. And what he meant is if you fall in the river, you got to turn over. You got to put your head and feet up. You got to look for the rope. And if we're not there, you got to swim, or there is a high probability of you will die. What better metaphor for life is there than that? And for me, the number one thing that we men, how we can participate in our rescue is by investing in ourselves first. We will invest in the stock market. We will invest in our businesses, in our careers, in our families. Hell, we'll even invest in people we don't know, but we put ourselves last. We've got to invest in this. We've got to invest in this. We got to invest in this, and we got to invest in our physical bodies. Now, how many of you boys work out on a regular basis? Almost all of you. What kind of silly question is that? Of course we work out. Work out and conquer. That's what we do. Not all of you raised your hands. I was shocked because you guys all look really good from here. Of course, I can't see anything. God like that. But we have got to, I spend 2 hours a day, truth, on my emotional health, my mental health, my physical health, and my spiritual health so that I can serve my businesses, so that I can serve my wife, and so that I can serve my family. Because if you're not running, you can't be the best leader, the best human, the best man unless you do this. And the two best tools that I know, tool number one that helps so many people is a formal and informal gratitude practice. And I'm going to share with you what mine is. So when you're angry or envious or pissed off or stressed out, none of us ever deal with that, do we? Ever. If you can switch it to gratitude, you go from a place of fear and anger to a place of abundance and love almost instantly. But it is a practice. All of these things are practice. Remember I said these are muscles, your emotional muscles, your mental muscles, your physical muscles, your spirit. They're muscles. They must be worked out, and these are practices that take time. You're not going to become LeBron overnight, and you're not going to be an emotional warrior overnight. So my formal gratitude practice is I write five things down every day that I'm grateful for. They usually happen the previous day, and at night I tell my wife something I'm grateful for her. And during the day, over the past 7 years, every time I feel that anger bug, that stress bug, I switch it to gratitude. It's been life-saving. The second thing, and bear with me here, it's true. Second thing that's been the most powerful in my life, and the most powerful to the men's lives that I help, is meditation. Daily meditation practice. That one's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It is really, really hard, but it gets you where your feet are, it exercises your brain, and it makes you proactive as opposed to reactive. Because how many of us are reactive? It is the single best, you're not reactive at all, brother. You got a question?
No.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Power to the people. It takes a lot of time to learn, but all of these things are practices. The third tool I want to give you, so gratitude practice, meditation practice, and these are daily practices. I probably spend 7 minutes on gratitude, but I do it all day, consciously do it all day. Meditation, I do for about 20-something minutes a day. It's been life-changing. And it also helps the dudes I was talking about earlier. It's wonderful. The third tool I want to get you, and this one's been the most powerful thing I've implemented in the past 2 years. In every decision you make, this will help you reconquer your time and reconquer your happiness. But again, it's a practice, and you're not going to be able to implement it overnight. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Think about that. Let me tell you what a hell yes is. You know people when they walk in there, you got a grandmother or a mother or an aunt, when she walks in the room, it just lifts you right up. You just feel like a better human. That's your hell yes. But you know the moment somebody calls you and they say, hey man, you want to have dinner? And you're like, God, that's not even a yes, that's an F no. But there's times you're like, I don't know, that's a no. You will reconquer your time. If you can try to implement that, not try, Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. Let's take the try out of our dictionary. But if you actively work at that, you will reconquer your time and reconquer your happiness, and you will start eliminating those energy vampires in your life because they will start to go away, and we all have them. The difficult one is your family. That's the hard one to implement that. I don't have that problem. You know, if you can't find the crazy one, you're it in your family. We are all nuts and we're all hell knows, so it's kind of really easy. So that's really easy in mine. So I want to repeat that again. And then I'm going to give you a question that I want to take you home. This is where we get to feel down and touch if we got a pair or not, this question coming up. Gratitude, meditation, hell yes or no? And I'll be happy to talk to you guys more about that afterwards. So I'm going to make you look in the mirror for a second. And this is not mine. I got this from an amazing book. But ask yourself this one question, gentlemen. If there was one thing in your life that you needed to get rid of that would increase your happiness 10x, what is it? Please don't speak it out loud. I bet 90% of you knew immediately what that was. And you want to look in the mirror and look at your deepest, darkest secrets and those clouds and wounds and stories. Look in the mirror and ask yourself why you will not give it up, and keep asking yourself why till you get down to the core, and that is your deepest, darkest secret, and it's your deepest, darkest wound, gentlemen. And that's where you begin the work. That's where this work begins to be the men that you were always born to be. I'm not here to change you. I'm here to tell you that there are tools and systems and skills that you can build to be the best man-husband relationship. Because change is hard. It is ridiculously hard, and it takes a lot of work. And it is amazing to me how we would rather sit and stew in our discomfort here more than we would, or we fear the future more than this discomfort. Like we're scared to change and try. You guys knew the answer to that question. Do you need that 8th beer? Do you need that 8th hour of Netflix, video games, porn, affair, gambling? All of that, probably more than one of those. We're human, man, it happens. I read the definition of hell recently, and then we're going to close this up. It says the man that you are when you die meets the man that you could become. I almost wrecked my car when I heard that. I was like, oh, that is profound. The man you are meets the man you could have become. So I'm going to close with this. For 36 years, gentlemen, I did not believe life was a gift. I thought it was a curse. I really did. How sad is that? I now 100% believe we are born and granted 3 gifts. We are granted the gift of life. We get to live this life. We get to sit with great men, and we get to drink beer together. Hoorah. The second gift we're granted is the gift of choice. You get to choose until your very last breath. Let me be clear. I want you to hear me, gentlemen. You are not in control of anything but your choices. We like to think we're in control, but we're not. We can influence, but we're never in control, with the exception of our choices and our mindset. That's it. We get the gift of choice. Even when you're staring down the barrel of a gun, you get to choose to die with dignity. For someone who's had a gun held to his head, it's hard. Third gift we're granted is the gift of death. We don't like to talk about that one, but we truly don't know how much time we have on this earth. We don't know how many spins we get around the sun. We just don't know. A lot of men in this room. Statistically, somebody's going to go. So why are we not choosing to be better than we were yesterday and doubling down and invest in ourselves with happiness, peace, love, and to be the best men that we could possibly be? And I've been contemplating one more thing before I close this out. I've been contemplating the meaning of life, and this one's mine. And I realized the meaning of life to me is all verbs. I just kept writing things down until they made sense to me. And I've been doing this over 2 years, and some of the guys that know me here have heard me say this before. Here's what I think the meaning of life is. To give love, to receive love. Gentlemen, that one's really difficult for a lot of us. To receive love. The third is to find your purpose. We were all put here for a reason. Go find it. It's my favorite thing to help people do. And by the way, your purpose changes depending on the season of your life. Go find your purpose and go use that purpose to serve yourself and to serve others, because it begins and ends with service. We're here for our fellow humans. And finally, never stop growing and never stop learning till your very last breath. And I'll close this out, gentlemen, because no matter where you are in life, we get to take one step forward and then we get to take another step forward and know that we're not alone in our pain. And if you do the work, eventually you get to look up and you get to see this beautiful world one more time, just like that little boy laying in that ditch looking at that sky. And we get to choose how we act, we get to choose how we think, and we get to choose what we believe. And if fate allows us, gentlemen, we get to live on. I finally get to live on. God help us. God forgive us. We get to live on, gentlemen. I love you. Thank you.
Questions. I'm going to start because I got one. So, you obviously have some demons in the past. You have some. Can you guys hear me? You have some things that have obviously shaped who you are. Coming from myself, I know I've done things, I've experienced things in the past that I'm not proud of. That keep me up at night. That I sometimes feel like, am I actually forgiven for this? Right? Is grace a real thing? Is my faith in Christ a real thing? Is grace a real thing? So I'd be curious to know, like, your thought process from a faith standpoint and this concept of grace. Did that have an impact in your ability to move on or escape some of the things that happened in your past and saying, hey, this is who I was, but because of grace and my faith, this is my ability to move forward?
Not at first. Truth. It was very, very hard. It took a lot of time and work and mentorship to help me to A, forgive myself and to start forgiving others. But I think when I finally realized that something bigger than me had already forgiven me, it helped. But that doesn't make it any easier to forgive yourself, because you and I both know that we're the hardest on ourselves. We're our biggest, worst critic. God, if we talk to ourselves like to other people, Lord knows what would happen. But over time, a lot of mentorship, a lot of great mentorship by a lot of great men. I'm a coach. I still have a coach. I still have a psychologist. I'm an iron sharpens iron mastermind. But over time, I think faith is an act, but it's also a verb as well. And so for me, I don't know if I'm answering your question. It helped me at first allow me to forgive myself, because if something greater than me that was willing to die for me forgave me, and nothing else really matters. But that still doesn't chase those demons away that I'm not good enough and look what you did. It's taken me years to get past that. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah. I forgot to mention this, and I forgot to send it to Matthew, by the way. If you want, I have a one-page document of how I live my life with all of the tools on it. If you'll email me, I'll just send it to you. I forgot to send that to you, man. Yeah, actually, remind me and I'll just send it to you, and you can send it out to everybody. So that way you don't have to email me, please. I just realized what I said. I'm like, yeah. Please don't. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, brother.
You mentioned that meditation was like one of the top tools that you encourage guys to do. What does that look like each one? You said 7 minutes, which sounds pretty specific.
Mine is gratitude is more 7-ish.
Okay.
My meditation is closer to 20, sometimes 40, depending on the bigness of the projects. I'm still on a lot of corporate boards and do a lot of other stuff. And depending on how I'm feeling, like if I'm, us as men, we're constantly out there planning, conquering, worrying the next thing, or we're back here, we're never where our feet are. So if I'm getting off that wheel, I double down on it. So it's between 20 and 40 minutes. Something simple. If I'm walking to the bathroom, I'm just breathing and feeling my breath. And if I want to add some gratitude in it, thank you. Thank you. I'm not saying that out loud. People look at me like crazy. But I'm thinking it, and I'm laser focused on it. And even when you're walking into that big meeting or before you have to send that big email, if you'll just step back and breathe, I mean, literally take 5 deep breaths. God, I wish I was having beer. If you'll take 5, my voice held up. How about that? Thank you. It takes a lot of time because what you're going to notice, eventually meditation for me, meditation is a walking meditation, it's a silent meditation, and my favorite is a guided meditation. And I usually take my alpha business guys through guided meditations to help them with whatever they're going through for that particular day. But there's all sorts of form. There is no right or wrong. But I would start small, and you're going to get frustrated because they're going to tell you to quiet your mind. Try that for 30 seconds. You'll be having dinner at the football game, thinking about the pair of yoga pants that just walked by you. You'll be shocked at where your brain will go in 30 seconds. But I've been doing it for 8 years, and I'm shocked at how quickly I can bring myself back to laser focus and to be here right now. And from a leadership standpoint, from a family standpoint, from your wife's standpoint, I think my wife's calling me right now, my butt is shaking. No doubt, the wife. 100%. Are you drinking? No, I'm kidding. Because clearly that's going well in my past. But from a leadership standpoint, a presence with your kids standpoint, a focus standpoint, and just getting quiet. One thing we don't do, men, and I don't want to give you all my tools. I'll send the sheet to him. I do 30 minutes about 3 times a week of silence on a topic, and then I just sit. And over time, what comes is you'd be shocked at what you can do with your business and life and the things that come out in that too. So there's a whole bunch of forms of meditation, but I do minimum 20 minutes, maximum 40 minutes. And that's your brain, that's exercising your brain, and somewhat your soul. That's the muscles. That's what I do. Yep, to me it's strength. Not being vulnerable is killing men. It's killing us figuratively and literally. And not being able to stand up and step in, that doesn't mean you're going to be soft. That doesn't mean you're not a warrior. And that doesn't mean you don't kick ass when you got to kick ass. And we know when that time is. But to hold all that in, this is good. To wear that armor and masks, knowing that inside you got pain you need to deal with, and we all got it, we all got regrets, it's killing us. And we numb out. And we numb out mostly on work, and that one starts the rest of it. That's my very educated opinion with working with very ambitious men for a long time. It's killing us. I didn't get up here to emotionally vomit on you guys. God willing, I'm giving you permission. I was telling these guys, go somewhere and tell somebody, even if you got to go to the Atlanta Zoo and tell the panda bear. Start there. Because it's, I mean, think about all these football, I can give you countless examples. And we are eat up right now, gentlemen, with envy, and fear with our social media and our news. Fear, us versus them. I'm not good enough, envy. Look how pretty they are. Well, look how hot she is. Well, look how rich they are. Look at that car. Vulnerability helps with that too. Somebody over here, brother. Great question. The first step I took was a massive step because it was life or death for me. And I made the hard decision, and I wanted to turn around the entire way up there to do that 7-day living centered program. That was my first, and it was a massive step. Man, I couldn't tell you how many times I wanted to turn around on the way back. But you made a great point. I'm in the pain and purpose business. I hope people find meaning and purpose in life, but mostly I'm in the pain business. I wish it was flipped, man. People don't reach out for coach, help, until the proverbial shit hits the fan. And so my point was that the reason I love that question is start somewhere. What you don't want to do is overwhelm yourself with 75 tasks. Just start with one baby simple step. And do it, though, consistently for a long time, and then that's how you start the journey, and then you add another task, and then another, and another. But you've got to start very narrow and very simple, or you'll get overwhelmed. That's what I would recommend. And I have a bunch of different things I could recommend. The thing I would recommend over all of it is read. Read, 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 read. It'll change your life. I read 6 books a month.